"You won't believe this," my son said, his voice cold and distant. "The engagement happened last night." Those words hit me like a thunderclap. Just like that, my world shattered. I had spent months dreaming about this moment, about the day my son would ask for my blessing, about the joy of being included in his happiness. But instead, I was left in the dark, blindsided by a secret I wasn't even invited to witness. I sat there, phone trembling in my hand, trying to process what I had just heard. "Last night?" I whispered, disbelief choking my voice. "Why didn't you tell me? Why wasn't I there?" Max's answer was calm, almost rehearsed. It was a small private ceremony. Just us and a few close friends. Small. Private. Words that cut deeper than any knife. Because in my heart, family isn't small or private. Family is everything. I had been there for them through every struggle, every hardship. I had paid their rent when they couldn't. I had bought their furniture, filled their fridge, and given them more than I could afford. I had been their silent guardian, their invisible safety net. And yet, when it mattered most, I was invisible. I was not special enough. The word echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. Special people. I wasn't one of them. I thought about the dress I had picked out for Lena, the pale pink gown I had spent hours choosing, imagining how beautiful she would look, how proud I would be standing beside her. The shoes I had bought, the gift I had saved for months to give them on their big day. All of it. Wasted. Because I wasn't there. I wasn't invited. I was a stranger in my own son's life. The silence on the phone was deafening. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers. But I swallowed the pain, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Max, I've always been here for you. I've done everything I could to help. I just wanted to be part of this moment." His voice softened, but the distance remained. "Mom, it's not about you. We just wanted it to be our moment. Their moment. Without me." I hung up, my heart breaking in a way I never thought possible. For days I replayed the conversation, questioning myself. Had I done something wrong? Was I too much? Had I expected too much? Then I saw the photos. Lena, radiant in her white dress, the very dress I had helped pay for. Max smiling proudly, their friends toasting champagne, and me? Nowhere. I wasn't just left out. I was erased. The woman who had been their rock, their provider, their silent supporter, was suddenly a ghost. I felt invisible, and yet, just a week later, the phone rang again. This time, it was Lena. Her voice was different, no longer confident, no longer distant. It was shaky, almost pleading. "Renati," she said, "the rent is overdue. The landlord is threatening to evict us. You forgot to make the transfer." I was stunned. After the cold shoulder, the exclusion, the humiliation, they still called me when they needed help. I was silent for a moment, remembering all the times I had rushed to the bank to make that transfer, the times I had canceled my own plans to make sure they had a roof over their heads, the times I had eaten less so they could eat more, and now, after being shut out of their lives, they expected me to keep giving. I took a deep breath and said, "Lena, didn't I warn you? I only help special people." The silence on the other end was so thick I could almost hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one trembling. I was steady. I was firm because I had finally realized something important. Love isn't about money. Love isn't about what you give. Love is about respect, and respect is something I hadn't been given. That day marked a turning point. I began to see the truth. Clearly, I was no longer willing to be invisible. No longer willing to be taken for granted. No longer willing to be the silent provider for people who didn't value me. I started to count the cost, the rent, the groceries, the gifts, the emergencies, all the money I had spent over the years. It was more than I had imagined, tens of thousands of dollars. Money I had taken from my retirement, from my savings, from the life I had planned for myself. And for what? To be treated like a stranger, to be excluded from the most important moments, to be forgotten. I realized I had been living a lie that love could be bought, lie that my worth was measured by my generosity. But now, I was done. I was ready to take back control, to reclaim my dignity, to live for myself. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be confrontations. There would be heartbreak. There would be moments of doubt. But I was no longer afraid because I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is learning to say no. After that phone call, something inside me shifted. I realized I had been living in a bubble of denial, convincing myself that love could be measured by money, that my sacrifices would earn me a place in their hearts. But the truth was far harsher. I was just a wallet to them, a source of endless support with no gratitude or respect in return. I started to pull back, slowly at first. No more automatic transfers, no more last-minute grocery runs, no more silent sacrifices. It was terrifying to think about, but I knew I had to do it. I had to protect myself before I lost everything, my dignity, my peace, my future. The first time I went to the bank to cancel the automatic payments, my hands shook. The teller looked at me with concern, as if I were making a terrible mistake. But I was resolute. This was my money, my life, and I was finally taking control. When I told Max and Lena, the reaction was immediate and furious. Max called me repeatedly, his voice dripping with anger and disbelief. "Mom, how could you do this? We need that money." Lena sent messages filled with guilt and desperation, trying to manipulate me back into my old role. But I stood firm. I wasn't going to be their ATM anymore. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever faced. They showed up at my door unannounced, demanding explanations, pleading for help, and sometimes outright threatening me. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, trapped between love and betrayal. One afternoon, Max came over with a lawyer. They wanted me to sign papers giving them power of attorney over my finances. They said it was for my own good, that I was confused and needed help managing my money. The audacity of it made my blood boil. I refused. Told them I was perfectly capable of managing my own affairs and that I would not be bullied into handing over control of my life. The lawyer warned me that if I didn't cooperate, they could take me to court and have a judge declare me mentally incompetent. The thought terrified me, but it also steeled my resolve. I wasn't going to let them steal my freedom. I reached out to a trusted attorney, someone who specialized in elder rights and family law. He listened patiently as I told him everything: the exclusion from the engagement, the financial exploitation, the threats, and the emotional abuse. He assured me I wasn't alone and that there were legal protections in place to defend me. With his help, I began documenting everything, every transfer, every visit, every phone call. I gathered bank statements, receipts, and even testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed the family's behavior. It was exhausting, but necessary. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding my life. I reconnected with old friends, took up hobbies I had long abandoned, and began to focus on my own happiness for the first time in years. One of the most healing moments came when I met Eleanor, a neighbor who had faced similar struggles with her own family. We shared stories, tears, and laughter. She became my rock, reminding me that I deserved respect and love, not just from family, but from myself. Together, we formed a small support group of women who had been through financial and emotional abuse. We called ourselves the Sisters of Strength, and our bond gave me courage I never thought I had. The court date loomed closer, and the tension in my home was palpable. Max and Lena were relentless, trying every tactic to break me down, but I was ready. On the day of the hearing, I dressed in my best suit, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for my dignity, my autonomy, and my right to live free from manipulation. The courtroom was cold and intimidating, but I stood tall as my lawyer presented our case. We showed the judge the evidence of my competence and the family's financial exploitation. Witnesses testified to my mental clarity and the emotional abuse I had endured. Max and Lena's lawyer painted me as confused and vulnerable, but their story crumbled under cross-examination. The truth was clear. After what felt like an eternity, the judge ruled in my favor. I was declared fully competent, and the request for guardianship was denied. I felt a wave of relief and triumph wash over me. I had won more than a legal battle. I had reclaimed my life. In the weeks that followed, I changed the locks on my house and installed a security system. I cut off all contact with Max and Lena, focusing instead on healing and rebuilding. I traveled, took art classes, and volunteered in my community. For the first time in decades, I felt free. Sometimes I still think about the son I raised, the family I lost, and the love I thought I had. But I no longer let those thoughts consume me. I have learned that true love cannot be bought or forced. It must be given freely and with respect. And most importantly, I have learned to love and respect myself. The days after the court victory were both liberating and lonely. I had won my freedom, but at a great cost. The family I had known, the son I had raised, had become strangers. The house felt emptier without their presence, but it was a different kind of emptiness, one filled with peace rather than pain. It was a silence I had longed for, a quiet that allowed me to breathe again without the weight of constant worry and manipulation pressing down on my chest. I began to rebuild my life piece by piece. It wasn't easy. Years of putting others first had left me unsure of who I was without the role of caretaker and provider. But slowly, I started to rediscover myself. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected for years, people who reminded me of who I was before life's demands took over. These friendships were like rays of sunlight breaking through a long, dark winter. They brought laughter, companionship, and a sense of belonging that I hadn't realized I was missing. One of the most healing things I did was to pick up my paintbrush again. Painting had been a passion of mine in my youth, a way to express emotions I couldn't put into words. But over the years, it had been pushed aside, buried beneath the endless responsibilities of family life. Now, with each stroke of color on the canvas, I felt a little more whole. The vibrant reds, blues, and yellows were not just paint. They were symbols of my reclaiming joy, creativity, and freedom. One afternoon, Eleanor, my kind and wise neighbor, invited me to a garden club meeting. It was a small group of women, each with their own stories of struggle and survival. We gathered in a cozy living room filled with plants and sunlight, sharing laughter, tears, and wisdom. These women became my sisters in strength, a support system I never knew I needed but now couldn't live without. Their stories mirrored mine in many ways, tales of betrayal, resilience, and the hard-won victories of setting boundaries. Through these new friendships, I learned the importance of boundaries. I realized that love without respect is not love at all. It's a transaction, a burden, a cage. I vowed never to let anyone treat me as less than I deserved again. This was a lesson I had to learn the hard way, but it was one I embraced fully. I began to say no without guilt, to prioritize my needs, and to protect my peace fiercely. But the past wasn't ready to let go so easily. Max and Lena continued to lurk on the edges of my life, their presence a shadow I couldn't ignore. They drove past my house, sometimes stopping briefly, as if trying to find a way back in. I documented every visit, every call, every message. My lawyer advised me to keep detailed records. It could be crucial if they tried to escalate their tactics. The feeling of being watched was unsettling, but I refused to let fear control me. One day, a social worker arrived at my door, claiming to conduct a wellness check. I was wary but let her in, knowing that refusing could be used against me. The questions were invasive, designed to paint me as unstable, but I stood my ground, answering calmly and confidently. My lawyer was there within minutes, ready to protect my rights. The social worker left with no grounds for intervention, but the experience was a stark reminder of how far Max and Lena were willing to go. They weren't just after money, they wanted control. Despite the challenges, I refused to be broken. I focused on my health, my happiness, and my independence. I traveled to places I had only dreamed of, took cooking classes, and even joined a book club. Life was opening up in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Each new experience was a step away from the pain and toward a future I could shape on my own terms. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the stars, I felt a profound sense of peace. The woman I had been, the one who gave everything and asked for nothing, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and free. The cool night air brushed against my skin, and I breathed deeply, savoring the moment. I thought about the journey I had been on, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the fight for my dignity, and I felt proud. Proud that I had survived, that I had reclaimed my life. I thought about forgiveness, about whether I could ever reconcile with Max and Lena. But I knew some wounds run too deep. Sometimes, the best love is the love you give yourself. I had learned that self-love was not selfish. It was necessary. It was the foundation upon which all other relationships must be built. And so, I chose to live fully, to love freely, and to cherish the freedom I had fought so hard to reclaim. I surrounded myself with people who valued me, who respected me, and who celebrated my strength. I no longer sought validation from those who had never truly seen me. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was hopeful. Hopeful that my story could inspire others to stand up for themselves, to set boundaries, and to demand the respect they deserve, because no one should ever have to buy love, because no one should ever have to sacrifice their happiness for the sake of others, because true freedom comes from within, and I was finally free. Even though I had reclaimed my freedom, the scars of betrayal ran deep. Every time I thought I had moved on, a memory would surface, like a shadow lurking just beyond the light. I remembered the countless nights I stayed awake worrying about Max and Lena, the sacrifices I made silently, the dreams I shelved for their sake. It was hard to accept that all of it had been taken for granted, that my love had been mistaken for weakness. But I refused to let bitterness consume me. Instead, I chose to channel my pain into strength. I began volunteering at a local community center, helping other seniors who faced similar struggles. Sharing my story gave me purpose and reminded me that I was not alone. There were many others who had been hurt by those they loved, who had been used and discarded. Together, we formed a quiet army of resilience. One afternoon, while organizing a workshop on financial independence for seniors, I met a woman named Maria. She was in her late 60s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Maria shared her own story of family betrayal, how her daughter had drained her savings and then cut off all contact. We bonded instantly, our shared experiences weaving a tapestry of understanding and hope. Maria's courage inspired me. She had fought back, just like I was doing, and had found peace on the other side. We decided to start a support group, a safe space where people could share their stories without fear of judgment. We called it the Phoenix Circle, symbolizing rebirth from the ashes of pain. The group grew quickly. Every week, new faces joined us, men and women who had been silenced by shame or fear. We laughed, cried, and healed together. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, community and connection could light the way forward. Meanwhile, Max and Lena's attempts to regain control became more desperate. They sent letters demanding money, tried to involve other family members, and even attempted to tarnish my reputation in the neighborhood. But I stood firm, backed by my lawyer and the support of my new friends. One particularly difficult day, I received a call from a distant relative I hadn't spoken to in years. She had heard rumors about the family feud and wanted to check on me. Her kindness was a balm to my wounded heart. We talked for hours, and she offered to help mediate a conversation with Max and Lena if I was ready. I wasn't sure I was. The wounds were still fresh, and the betrayal too deep. But part of me longed for closure, for a chance to be heard and understood. After much thought, I agreed to the meeting. It was held in a neutral place, a quiet cafe with soft lighting and private booths. I arrived early, my heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. Max and Lena showed up, looking tired and worn. The years of conflict had taken their toll on all of us. We sat down, and for a moment, there was silence. Then I spoke. I told them everything, the pain of being excluded, the hurt of being used, the loneliness of being invisible. I spoke not with anger, but with honesty and vulnerability. I wanted them to understand how deeply their actions had affected me. Max looked down, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Lena reached out, but I gently pulled back. "I'm not here to blame," I said. "I'm here to heal." We talked for hours, sometimes stumbling over words, sometimes finding moments of connection. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was a start. I realized that forgiveness was not about forgetting or excusing the past. It was about freeing myself from the burden of resentment. It was about choosing peace over pain. In the weeks that followed, we began to rebuild our relationship slowly. Boundaries were set, respect was demanded, and love was cautiously given. It was fragile, but it was real. Through this journey, I learned that family is complicated. It can hurt us deeply, but it can also teach us about resilience, forgiveness, and the power of love. I also learned that the most important relationship we have is with ourselves. When we love and respect ourselves, we set the standard for how others should treat us, and that is a lesson worth fighting for. After that tentative meeting, life settled into a new rhythm, one that was both unfamiliar and strangely comforting. I had learned to cherish the quiet moments, the simple pleasures that I had long neglected. Mornings spent sipping coffee on my balcony, afternoons lost in a good book, evenings filled with laughter and stories shared with my new friends. It was a life rebuilt on my terms, free from the shadows of the past. Yet the journey was far from over. Healing is rarely a straight path. There were days when the weight of loneliness pressed heavily on my chest, when memories of betrayal threatened to pull me back into despair. But each time I reminded myself of how far I had come. I was no longer the woman who gave everything and asked for nothing. I was a woman who valued herself, who demanded respect, and who refused to be invisible. One afternoon, as I was tending to my garden, a hobby I had rediscovered thanks to Eleanor, I received a letter. It was from Max. My heart skipped a beat as I unfolded the paper, unsure of what to expect. The letter was an apology. It was heartfelt and sincere, acknowledging the pain he had caused and expressing a desire to make amends. He spoke of his own struggles, the pressures he had faced, and the mistakes he had made. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope, I wrote back, cautiously optimistic. I told him that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination, and that I was willing to take the first step. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. Over the following months, our communication grew. We exchanged letters, phone calls, and eventually, visits. Each interaction was a delicate dance of rebuilding trust, setting boundaries, and learning to love again. Lena, too, reached out. She expressed remorse and a desire to change. It wasn't easy to forgive her, but I recognized that holding on to anger would only hurt me. I chose to open my heart, slowly and carefully. Through this process, I discovered the power of vulnerability. It was scary to let down my guard, to risk being hurt again. But it was also liberating. It allowed me to connect with my son and daughter-in-law on a deeper level, beyond the pain and resentment. Our family was far from perfect, but it was healing. We were learning to communicate, to respect each other's needs, and to build a foundation of genuine love. Meanwhile, my life outside the family flourished. I continued to paint, my canvases reflecting the colors of my journey, pain, hope, strength, and renewal. I traveled to places I had only dreamed of, each trip a celebration of my newfound freedom. I also became an advocate for elder rights, sharing my story to raise awareness about financial abuse and emotional manipulation. I spoke at community centers, wrote articles, and connected with organizations dedicated to protecting seniors. My voice, once silenced by fear and shame, was now a beacon of hope for others. One day, as I was preparing for a speaking engagement, I received a call from a young woman named Sarah. She had been following my story and wanted to thank me for giving her the courage to stand up to her own family. Her words touched me deeply. It reminded me that our stories have power, that by sharing our pain and triumphs, we can inspire change and healing in others. As I hung up the phone, I looked out at the sunset, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. My journey had been difficult, filled with heartbreak and struggle, but it had also been a journey of growth, resilience, and love. I was no longer defined by the pain of the past. I was defined by the strength I had found within myself, and that strength would carry me forward into a future filled with hope, freedom, and endless possibilities. As the months passed, I found myself embracing a new chapter of life, one where I was no longer defined by the roles others had forced upon me. I was no longer just a mother, a provider, or a silent sufferer. I was a woman rediscovering her own identity, her own dreams, and her own voice. One morning, I woke up with a sense of excitement I hadn't felt in years. I decided to enroll in an art class at the local community college. Painting had always been my refuge, but now it was becoming a way to express the complex emotions I had carried for so long. The classroom was filled with people of all ages, each with their own stories and reasons for being there. I felt a sense of belonging, a reminder that life was full of possibilities, no matter your age. My instructor, a kind and patient woman named Claire, encouraged me to explore new techniques and styles. She saw the passion behind my brushstrokes and pushed me to dig deeper. Through art, I began to process my pain, my anger, and my hope. Each canvas became a chapter in my healing journey. Outside of class, I continued to nurture the friendships I had formed. Eleanor remained a steadfast companion, always ready with a listening ear and a comforting word. Our garden club meetings became a sanctuary where we shared not only our love for plants, but also our struggles and triumphs. The support I found there was invaluable, reminding me that I was not alone. One afternoon, while walking through the park, I ran into an old friend, Margaret. We hadn't seen each other in years, but the connection was instant. Margaret had faced her own family challenges and understood the complexities of forgiveness and healing. We spent hours catching up, sharing stories, and planning future get-togethers. It was a beautiful reminder that life could surprise you with new beginnings. Meanwhile, my relationship with Max and Lena continued to evolve. We were still navigating the delicate balance of rebuilding trust, but there were moments of genuine connection. Max invited me to a small family dinner, a gesture that felt both tentative and hopeful. Lena apologized sincerely for the past, acknowledging the pain they had caused. I accepted their apologies, not because I had forgotten the hurt, but because I was choosing to move forward. Forgiveness was not about erasing the past, it was about freeing myself from its hold. As the seasons changed, so did I. I traveled to places I had only dreamed of, walking through the streets of Paris, exploring the art museums of Florence, and sitting quietly by the ocean in Santorini. Each trip was a celebration of my independence and a testament to the strength I had found within. I also became more involved in advocacy work. I spoke at events, sharing my story to raise awareness about elder financial abuse and emotional manipulation. I connected with organizations dedicated to protecting seniors, offering support and resources to those in need. One day, after a speaking engagement, a young woman approached me. Her eyes were filled with tears as she thanked me for giving her the courage to stand up to her own family. Her words touched me deeply, reminding me that our stories have the power to heal not only ourselves, but others as well. In quiet moments, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, the pain, the betrayal, the fight for dignity, and the eventual triumph. I realized that while the wounds of the past would always be a part of me, they no longer defined me. I was a woman reborn, stronger and wiser, ready to embrace whatever the future held, and as I looked toward that future, I knew one thing for certain: I would never again let anyone diminish my worth or silence my voice. Life continued to unfold in ways I had never imagined possible. Each day brought new opportunities to grow, to heal, and to embrace the freedom I had fought so hard to reclaim. I found joy in the little things: a warm cup of tea in the morning, the sound of birds singing outside my window, the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. These simple pleasures became the foundation of my new life. One morning, as I was preparing breakfast, I received a call from Max. My heart skipped a beat, a mixture of hope and caution swirling inside me. He wanted to talk, not about money, not about past grievances, but about rebuilding our relationship. We spoke for hours, sharing stories, laughter, and even tears. It was a conversation filled with vulnerability and honesty, a far cry from the cold exchanges of the past. Encouraged by this breakthrough, Max invited me to join him and Lena for a weekend getaway. It was a small cabin by the lake, a place where we could reconnect away from the distractions of everyday life. I hesitated at first, unsure if I was ready to face the ghosts of our past. But something inside me urged me to take the chance. The weekend was a mixture of awkward moments and genuine connection. We cooked meals together, took long walks by the water, and shared stories under the stars. For the first time in years, I felt like part of a family again, not perfect, but real. Lena apologized again, her eyes filled with remorse. She spoke of the pressures she had felt, the mistakes she had made, and her desire to change. I saw a different side of her, a woman struggling to find her way, just like me. As the weekend came to a close, I realized that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. It required patience, understanding, and a willingness to let go of the past. I was ready to take that journey, one step at a time. Back home, I continued to nurture my passions. My art flourished, each painting a reflection of my evolving spirit. I held an exhibition at a local gallery where friends, neighbors, and even strangers came to see my work. The response was overwhelming, filling me with a sense of pride and accomplishment. I also deepened my involvement in advocacy. I partnered with organizations to create workshops and resources for seniors facing financial abuse. Sharing my story became a mission, a way to empower others to stand up for themselves and reclaim their lives. One day, I received a letter from a young woman named Emily. She had been inspired by my journey and wanted to share her own story. Emily was caring for an elderly parent who was being manipulated by family members. She felt overwhelmed and alone. We began corresponding regularly, exchanging advice, encouragement, and support. Our friendship blossomed, a testament to the power of connection and shared experience. Through these relationships, I discovered a new purpose. My pain had transformed into strength, my struggles into wisdom. I was no longer defined by the past, but by the resilience I had cultivated. As I looked toward the future, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had learned that life is not about perfection, but about growth. It's about embracing the journey, with all its twists and turns, and finding joy in the process. And most importantly, I had learned to love myself. With each passing day, I grew more confident in my new life. The shadows of the past no longer held me captive. Instead, they served as reminders of the strength I had found within myself. I embraced the freedom to live authentically, to pursue my passions, and to surround myself with people who truly cared. It was a transformation that felt both exhilarating and grounding, a rebirth of sorts. One of the most rewarding experiences during this time was mentoring younger women who faced similar challenges. I started a small group at the community center, where we met weekly to share stories, offer advice, and support one another. These gatherings became a sanctuary, a place where vulnerability was met with compassion and strength was nurtured through shared experience. Watching these women find their voices and reclaim their power was deeply fulfilling. It reminded me that healing is not just personal, it's communal. Together, we were weaving a tapestry of resilience and hope. My art continued to flourish as well. I experimented with new styles and mediums, pouring my emotions onto the canvas. Each piece told a story of pain, resilience, hope, and renewal. The colors I chose reflected the complexity of my journey. Deep blues for sorrow, fiery reds for anger, soft greens for healing, and bright yellows for joy. The local gallery invited me to hold a solo exhibition, a milestone I had never imagined reaching. The opening night was filled with friends, family, and strangers moved by the raw honesty of my work. I stood there, overwhelmed by the support and the realization that my pain had been transformed into something beautiful and meaningful. Max and Lena's presence in my life became more balanced over time. We maintained regular contact, setting clear boundaries that respected my needs and well-being. While the wounds of the past still lingered, we were learning to build a relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension and misunderstanding, but the willingness to try was a step forward. I learned to listen without judgment and to express my feelings without fear. It was a delicate dance, but one that brought a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. One afternoon, I received a call from a woman named Claire. She was a social worker specializing in elder care and had heard about my advocacy work. Claire invited me to collaborate on a project aimed at educating families about financial abuse and emotional manipulation. I eagerly accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to make a broader impact. Together, we developed workshops, informational materials, and support networks for seniors and their caregivers. The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life reached out, grateful for the resources and the chance to share their stories. It was a powerful reminder that no one should suffer in silence. As my advocacy work expanded, I was invited to speak at conferences and community events. Standing before audiences, sharing my journey, and offering hope was both humbling and empowering. I realized that my pain had transformed into purpose. Each story I told, each tear shed, and each smile shared was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I was no longer just a survivor, I was a beacon of hope. One evening, after a particularly moving speech, a young man approached me. He introduced himself as David and shared that he had been estranged from his mother for years due to financial disputes. Hearing my story had given him the courage to reach out and begin the process of reconciliation. David's words touched me deeply. It was a testament to the ripple effect of sharing our truths, that by being vulnerable, we can inspire healing in others. I felt a profound sense of connection, knowing that my journey was helping to light the way for someone else. In quieter moments, I reflected on the woman I had been, the one who had sacrificed so much for others, often at the expense of her own happiness. I no longer recognized her, and I was grateful. The journey had transformed me into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I had learned to set boundaries, to say no without guilt, and to prioritize my own well-being. These lessons were hard-earned but invaluable. I had learned that self-love is not selfish. It is essential. It is the foundation upon which all other relationships are built. Without it, we risk losing ourselves in the needs and demands of others. Loving myself meant honoring my feelings, protecting my peace, and embracing my worth. It was a radical act of courage and kindness. As I looked toward the future, I felt a sense of excitement and possibility. There were still challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them with courage and grace. I knew that life would continue to test me, but I also knew that I had the strength to overcome whatever came my way. I was no longer defined by my past, but by the strength I had cultivated through adversity. And that strength would carry me forward into a life filled with love, freedom, and endless potential. As the seasons changed, so did my perspective on life. I began to see beauty in the everyday moments, the way sunlight filtered through the trees, the laughter of children playing in the park, the comforting routine of morning coffee. These simple pleasures became anchors, grounding me in the present and reminding me that life, despite its hardships, was still full of wonder. One crisp autumn morning, I decided to take a solo trip to the countryside. I wanted to escape the noise of the city and find solace in nature. The rolling hills, the golden leaves, and the fresh air were exactly what I needed. I spent my days walking along quiet trails, journaling my thoughts, and reflecting on my journey. The solitude was healing, allowing me to reconnect with myself on a deeper level. During this trip, I met an elderly couple who shared their own story of family struggles and reconciliation. Their wisdom and kindness touched me deeply. They reminded me that healing is a lifelong process, and that forgiveness, while difficult, can open the door to peace. Their story gave me hope and reinforced my commitment to continue my own path of healing. Back home, I continued to nurture my relationships with my new friends and community. The garden club blossomed into a vibrant network of support and friendship. We organized events, volunteered together, and celebrated each other's milestones. These connections filled the void left by my fractured family and brought joy and meaning to my days. Max and Lena remained a part of my life, though our relationship was cautious and measured. We communicated regularly, always mindful of the boundaries we had set. There were still moments of tension and misunderstanding, but also moments of genuine connection and growth. I learned to accept that healing is not linear and that patience is essential. One day, I received an invitation to speak at a national conference on elder abuse. It was an honor and a testament to how far I had come. Standing before a large audience, sharing my story, and advocating for change was empowering. I felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment that I had never experienced before. After the conference, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. She thanked me for giving her the courage to leave an abusive relationship and seek help. Her words were a powerful reminder of the impact our stories can have on others. It reinforced my belief that vulnerability is strength and that sharing our experiences can inspire healing and transformation. As the years passed, I continued to grow and evolve. I traveled to new places, explored new hobbies, and embraced new opportunities. I surrounded myself with people who uplifted and supported me. I learned to celebrate my achievements, no matter how small, and to be gentle with myself during setbacks. Looking back, I realized that my journey was not just about overcoming betrayal and reclaiming my life. It was about discovering my own worth, embracing my resilience, and finding joy in the present. It was about learning to love myself unconditionally and to live authentically. I understood that life is a series of chapters, each with its own challenges and blessings. While some chapters may be painful, they are also opportunities for growth and transformation. And no matter what the future holds, I am ready to face it with courage, grace, and an open heart. The journey of healing and rediscovery was not without its challenges. There were days when the weight of the past threatened to pull me back into despair. Memories of betrayal, exclusion, and loneliness would surface unexpectedly, casting shadows over my newfound peace. But each time, I reminded myself of the strength I had cultivated and the life I was building. One such day, I received a letter from Max. It was unexpected, and my heart raced as I unfolded the paper. The letter was an invitation to a family gathering, a chance to reconnect with relatives I hadn't seen in years. Max expressed a desire to mend fences and rebuild relationships. The words were tentative but hopeful. I spent hours contemplating the decision. Part of me longed for reconciliation, for the warmth of family bonds. Another part feared reopening old wounds. After much reflection, I decided to attend. It was a step toward healing, a chance to rewrite the story. The gathering was held at a cozy home filled with familiar faces and new ones. The atmosphere was a mix of nostalgia and cautious optimism. I was greeted with hugs and smiles, some genuine, others tentative. As the evening unfolded, stories were shared, laughter echoed, and connections were rekindled. Max and Lena were there, their presence both comforting and complex. We navigated conversations with care, acknowledging the past while focusing on the present. It was not perfect, but it was a beginning. In the weeks that followed, our family ties strengthened. We communicated more openly, shared experiences, and supported one another. The journey was ongoing, filled with both progress and setbacks, but the willingness to try was a victory in itself. Outside of family, my life continued to flourish. I deepened my involvement in advocacy, partnering with organizations to create resources for seniors facing abuse. I spoke at events, wrote articles, and connected with others who shared my mission. The work was fulfilling, a way to transform pain into purpose. One day, I received a call from a young woman named Emily. She had been inspired by my story and wanted to share her own. Emily was caring for an elderly parent who was being manipulated by family members. She felt overwhelmed and isolated. We began corresponding regularly, exchanging advice, encouragement, and support. Our friendship blossomed, a testament to the power of connection and shared experience. Through Emily, I saw the ripple effect of healing, that by sharing our stories, we can empower others to reclaim their lives. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that the greatest gift I had given myself was the courage to love and respect who I am. I had learned that self-love is not a destination, but a daily practice, a commitment to honor my worth, set boundaries, and nurture my well-being. I understood that life's challenges do not define us. Our responses to them do. I chose to respond with strength, grace, and compassion toward myself and others. Looking ahead, I felt a profound sense of hope. The future was unwritten, full of possibilities and promise. I was ready to embrace it with an open heart and a resilient spirit. And as I stepped forward, I carried with me the lessons of the past, the pain, the growth, and the unwavering truth that I am worthy of love, respect, and happiness. The final steps of my journey were filled with quiet reflection and a deep sense of peace. I had traveled a long road from betrayal and heartbreak to healing and empowerment. Each chapter had shaped me, teaching me invaluable lessons about love, resilience, and self-worth. It was a transformation that went far beyond the surface. It was a rebirth of my spirit, a reclaiming of my identity. One morning, as I sat by the window watching the sunrise, I thought about the woman I had been, the one who gave everything and asked for nothing. I remembered the countless sacrifices, the silent tears, the moments of loneliness hidden behind a smile. I realized how much strength it took to break free from that role, to reclaim my life and my dignity. It was a transformation born of pain but blossomed into hope. The woman I was now was not the same as the one who had endured so much. She was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, not just toward others, but toward herself. I thought about Max and Lena, the family I had lost and slowly begun to rebuild. Forgiveness had not come easily, nor had trust. There were days when the wounds felt fresh, when the memories of betrayal threatened to pull me back into despair. But I had learned that healing is a process, not a destination. It requires patience, courage, and a willingness to embrace vulnerability. Forgiveness was not about forgetting or excusing the past. It was about freeing myself from the burden of resentment. It was about choosing peace over pain. Our relationship was still fragile, like a delicate flower just beginning to bloom after a harsh winter. We communicated more openly, shared experiences, and supported one another. There were moments of tension and misunderstanding, but also moments of genuine connection and growth. I learned to listen without judgment and to express my feelings without fear. It was a delicate dance, but one that brought a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I also thought about the new family I had found, the friends, the community, the sisters in strength who had stood by me. They had shown me that love and support can come from unexpected places, and that true connection is built on respect and understanding. These women had become my pillars, my confidants, my chosen family. Together, we celebrated victories, comforted each other in sorrow, and shared the simple joys of life. Their presence reminded me that I was not alone, that I was worthy of love and belonging. My advocacy work continued to be a source of purpose and fulfillment. Sharing my story, raising awareness, and helping others navigate their own struggles gave my life meaning beyond measure. I was no longer just a survivor. I was a guide, a beacon of hope for those still finding their way. Each speaking engagement, each article, each conversation was an opportunity to transform pain into power. I connected with people from all walks of life: seniors, caregivers, social workers, and advocates, united by a common goal to protect and empower the vulnerable. One afternoon, I received a letter from a young woman named Sarah. She wrote about her own journey, how my story had inspired her to stand up against financial abuse and reclaim her independence. Her words touched me deeply, a reminder that our stories have the power to heal not only ourselves but others as well. Sarah's courage and determination filled me with hope for the future. It was a testament to the ripple effect of sharing our truths, that by being vulnerable, we can inspire healing and transformation in others. As I prepared for another speaking engagement, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the hardships that had shaped me, for the love that had sustained me, and for the strength that had carried me through. I thought about the journey, the pain, the growth, the resilience, and I realized that every step had been necessary. Without the darkness, I would not have known the light. Without the struggle, I would not have discovered my strength. I knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but I was ready. Ready to face whatever came with grace, resilience, and an open heart. I had learned to trust myself, to listen to my intuition, and to honor my needs. I was no longer defined by my past, but by the strength I had cultivated through adversity. And that strength would carry me forward, into a life filled with love, freedom, and endless potential. The woman I had become was not defined by the pain of the past, but by the courage to rise above it. She was a testament to the power of self-love and the unbreakable spirit of the human heart. I had learned that true freedom comes from within, from the decision to love oneself fiercely and to live authentically. As the sun set on that day, I smiled, knowing that my story was far from over. It was a story of hope, healing, and the endless possibilities that come when we choose to love ourselves first. I was ready to embrace the future with open arms, knowing that whatever came my way, I had the strength to face it. In the quiet moments, I often reflected on the lessons I had learned. I understood that life is a series of chapters, each with its own challenges and blessings. While some chapters may be painful, they are also opportunities for growth and transformation. I had learned to embrace the journey, with all its twists and turns, and to find joy in the process. I also realized the importance of community and connection. No one heals alone. The support of friends, advocates, and kind strangers had been instrumental in my recovery. I vowed to continue building and nurturing these connections, to be a source of strength for others, as they had been for me. Looking back, I was proud of the woman I had become. She was resilient, compassionate, and courageous. She had faced betrayal and heartbreak, but had emerged stronger and wiser. She had reclaimed her life and her dignity, and she was determined to live fully and authentically. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and hope, I stepped into the next chapter of my life, ready to write new stories, create new memories, and continue the journey of healing and self-discovery. Because the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to love who we are, to honor our worth, and to live with purpose and joy.